Today, we're taking a look at the fearstofathom series, a small collection of games made by indie game developer Rail. These games are based on a combination of email submissions and Reddit posts. Each of them have you playing as regular people in completely plausible situations. There's 4 games out currently with a 5th installment just around the corner, so if there's any particular episode you want to watch first, there's timestamps in the description and on screen now. Without further ado, we'll jump into our first game, Home Alone. I didn't want to put this on Reddit just for it to be called a piece of fiction. I don't even know where to start. Excuse my lack of good storytelling skills. I guess I'll just start. It was the middle of the summer. My parents had left for that weekend due to a work trip, which meant I was all by myself for the weekend. Also, I feel like I do have to mention that my sleep schedule was really messed up around this time. I would sleep and get up just about any time of the day, though I did plan on fixing that. The first episode starts out in a situation we can all relate to. Just woken up from a nap and it's later than we thought. We've got some homework to do, but we need to eat first. It's a really interesting design choice that they let us play as a Minecraft villager in this first episode. One thing I really like about these games are the text messages you get. It's such a simple idea, but it expands the story so much. We've got a text from our mum telling us there's some lasagna in the fridge. All the lighting in the house is deliberately low, and when we look outside, we can see it's getting dark. When we open the fridge, I'm jealous of how well stocked it is. This guy's got 3 different types of cheese, steaks, ice creams, and of course, Mum's lasagna. Whilst the lasagna's in the oven, I spend a bit more time looking at my surroundings. This isn't the standard horror setup. Neighbourhoods like these look safe and inviting. The real scare comes from that universal feeling of being home alone late at night. The food's ready now, but we're playing as an iPad kid, so we have to put the TV on first before we can eat. We sit down and start eating dinner. One of the scariest parts of this first game is how loud this kid eats lasagna. Once he's done eating a full tray of piping hot lasagna, it's time to start homework. On the way back upstairs, the character's friend Mason texts and tells us he won't be able to come round tonight, confirming that we're on our own. There's 2 levels to being home alone. Having friends round consequence free, or being all alone, and tonight is going to be the latter. I decide to give homework a miss and go sleep off that full family-sized tray of lasagna. We wake up late into the night. It turns out the sodium levels of 4 full portions of lasagna are pretty high, and now we're feeling thirsty. Everyone can relate to having to go downstairs in the dark. That anxious feeling is amped up to 100 just by being on our own though. Once we've properly hydrated, it's time to get back to bed again. Before we can get into bed, we get a text from Mum. Someone's outside. Suddenly, the option to get into bed has changed and now gives us the option to hide underneath it. Eventually, I realise that I'm going to have to go and investigate, so I set off downstairs. Our mum starts texting us, telling us someone's been creeping around the house and not to open any of the doors. I've been playing for a while now, and I'm getting pretty deep into role-playing as a 14-year-old kid, so naturally, I disobey her. Obviously, that's not the real ending. Once we get the text from Mum, we're supposed to go to our room and hide under the bed. Even in our own room, we aren't safe. Whoever's outside just smashed the window and is now inside. We get another text from our mum telling us the neighbour's outside. Then we hear the doorbell ring. It's now or never. We have to make a break for it. A door opens and the intruder's shadow looms past it. I run straight back to the hiding spot. I spent a good few minutes trying to think of an escape plan, when suddenly the police arrive, and when we answer the door, our neighbours stood there. Although the encounter was only brief, the amount of tension this game held and the panic mixed with complete helplessness started this series off strong. If we cut back to just after our mum texts, we can peer through the window and see that it's an old man standing outside. You can also use your in-game mic to startle him.
Hey, buddy!
I tried to find out what happened after this episode, but it says on the wiki that the intruder was never caught. I also liked that the wiki went into enough detail to give us the intruder's occupation as well. All in all, this pilot level was the perfect debut for the Fearstofathom series. The entire episode felt like a prolonged, sustained atmosphere of that gut-wrenching feeling you get when you're home alone. Home is supposed to be where you feel the safest, so using a family home as a setting for a horror scenario isn't always easy to pull off. I loved this first episode, even though it was the most bare-bones entry in the series. You can play the whole thing in about 15 minutes tops, and it's free to download on Steam. We're going to jump straight into episode 2 now, and if you're enjoying this video, consider leaving me a like and subscribe. Now, introducing episode 2, the NORWOOD Hitchhike. This happened to me when I was 19. I'm a little over 21 now, and I still remember this clearly because of how creeped out I felt. I was a bit hesitant to write this out on the internet at first, but getting it out may help, even if just a little bit. I was one of those people that loves gaming conventions. I'd go to every convention I got the chance to, and sometimes even meet some of my online friends. Though my parents weren't always thrilled at the idea of me going on interstate drives, but a plane ticket would have been too expensive. The convention I was at went great, and it was now the day to drive back home. But when I set off, I soon realised the traffic was horrible. I decided that I'd take the long way to avoid traffic. It was a little over 12-hour drive. So the second episode starts out with you driving down a dark road. I got a text in real life when I started my playthrough, and if you've ever seen a better promotion for the Don't Text and Drive campaign, let me know, cause that's right. You can die within the first 5 seconds of this game. I guess the real Fearstofathom are distracted drivers. All jokes aside, it's really unnerving driving through here. The road is surrounded by woods, and I'm starting to wonder what's going to go wrong in this story. Halfway through the journey and we're running low on gas. The whole time we're getting texts from my dad, but I'm not falling for that one again. Whilst we're driving, I spot this figure that disappears into the woods. Moving on from that, we eventually arrive at a gas station and it's time to pull up. One thing I really love about these games is the constant eerie music in the background. Even when nothing too exciting's happening, there's this ambient score building tension the whole time. We buy a full tank of gas, and once we do, the cashier tries to warn us of the NORWOOD monster. I'm more interested in how interactive this environment is. You can pick up so many things from the shelf, and the level of mischief you can get up to as a result of this is off the charts. There's even vending machines in here, and I decide to treat myself to a meat snack. I love when games do this. It's easy to just slap a 2D texture over a shelf and call it a day, but when game environments are overly detailed like this one, I spend a good chunk of time exploring them. There's another guy wandering around in here, and if we ask him about the NORWOOD monster, he just replies, "Big mistake." Speaking to him again, he just gives us a look.
She gives me a real, and I'm saying this now, she gives me a real done-up look.
Before we leave, the cashier tries to creep us out one last time. He tells us not to pick up any hitchhikers, and tells us a story about a girl who died on prom night who now haunts the road. As if I wasn't creeped out enough by the music, this guy disappearing into the woods, and the fact that in the previous episode, this kid ate a full family-sized tray of lasagna. We get everything in the boot, and before we know it, we're back on that dark road. Eventually, we come up to the bridge where the cashier warned us about. I'm expecting to see the NORWOOD monster or the ghost girl from prom night, but no such luck. For the sake of this video's length, I've trimmed about 90% of the driving segment from this episode. It goes on for a surprisingly long time, and compared to the first episode where we're only confined to the house, the map in this episode is huge. The road feels like it goes on forever, and with how rural it is, it feels like anything could jump out at any time. At one point, I even got out the car just to take it all in. It was chilling, being in the middle of nowhere in complete darkness. We continue down the road a bit further before we meet our first obstacle of this game. 2 tree trunks in the middle of the road. It doesn't help that the character suspects that someone's put them there deliberately. Not wasting any time, I start to shift them out the way and get back to the car. Out of nowhere, the engine won't switch on. Judging by the episode's name and what the cashier told us earlier, I was expecting us to be picking up a hitchhiker in this story. I never once thought of the possibility that we'd end up being the hitchhiker. After some time stood around in the dark, we start to see a car coming down the road. The driver must have taken the cashier's advice too, because they drive straight past us. So I messed up after this part. I figured we were supposed to start walking down this road on foot, when in reality you're supposed to wait by the car, but the game just lets you wander aimlessly down this road, which goes on for ages. I must have walked for about a solid 15 minutes before I realised this wasn't what you were supposed to do. Eventually, a truck comes down the road, and this time they're generous enough to pull over for us. When we go to the window, we're greeted by this familiar face from the gas station. We ask for a lift back to civilization, and he agrees, telling us to get our belongings. We chuck everything in the back and set off. I'm starting to wonder if this was a good idea, but then the driver apologises for ignoring us earlier, and finally drops us off at the motel. We get a room and ask for a roadside service, and on our way to bed, there's a half-torn sign on the window that reads, "Not approved for occupancy." On our phone, there's a bunch of texts from our dad, but the lack of service means we can't reply to any of them. We get into the room and it doesn't look too bad. The playable character says it smells musty, but beggars can't be choosers. I decide to take a quick look in the bathroom. The first big scare of the game, luckily, is just the room service guy. He tells us to give him a minute to get the room set up. Finally, we're all settled in bed. It's been a difficult night, but we've got shelter and our car's being towed. We're through the worst of it. Or so we thought. Suddenly, the player character starts to feel anxious. She decides to step outside and get a coffee from a nearby machine. On the way back, that cappuccino starts to get a bit of an aftertaste. If we weren't feeling vulnerable before, we are now. The controls become inverted and the visuals on our screen distorted. The only option now is to get back inside and try and sleep whatever this is off. We wake up late into the night. The receptionist is at the door and he tells us to stop making noise, but we've been asleep the whole time. We tell him about the coffee machine and he asks us to bring it to him. When we lead him over there, it's gone. He tells us to go back to our room, and this is the part of the story that makes me a bit skeptical. This shady guy tells us to take some random unlisted medication in the drawer of the room, and the player character actually has to do it to progress the story. Afterwards, it's time to sleep, but I can't shake the feeling that someone's outside the room watching. I get up out of bed again to check the window. I can swear I just saw something moving outside the window.
Hello?
There's a voice from outside the door. Whoever it is, they say they need to come in. I try and hide at first, but they're not going to go away. I try again and ask them to leave. To this day, I find it really weird that the manager interfered not to get the police involved, as it would have affected the motel's reputation and let go of the situation. I believe that the town could have been home to a cult or a drug ring, or possibly something even worse. Tommy arrived with the car after what felt like a year. I never went on long road trips again. I would always take aeroplanes. So, this last part was a little underwhelming. The receptionist manages to catch the stalker, but in my opinion, we're introduced to him a little too far into the story. I replayed the motel segment and found out that if you open the wardrobe at this point, the stalker is actually already inside the room and will come out and murder you. The atmosphere in this episode was perfect. I felt uncomfortable throughout most of it, but the second half lets it down a little bit. Knowing that there's 2 members of staff here at the motel gives me a bit too much peace of mind. Looking back, there were a few signs that we were being stalked. Overall, I'd say this second game is still decent. However, the third installment is, in my opinion, the scariest. Introducing episode 3, Carson House. My name is Noah. I'm a 28-year-old male from the Midwest. I have no idea why I'm sending this, but I hope my story can be a lesson. This happened to me when I was 18, but I remember this incident like yesterday, as the trauma dictated a major part of my life. For a little background, my dad was a realtor, and almost always became friends with his clients. One day he came home and pitched me a small job offer for the weekend. One of his old clients was going away for a few days and needed somebody he could trust to watch over his house. The third episode of Fearstofathom starts out at this laundromat. It's raining outside, and once we head through this door, it's fair to assume we're dreaming. I'm not sure why Rail put this much detail into this episode's introduction, given that the dream has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the story, but I'll trust the process on this one. When we wake up in the car, our dad tells us to get Mr. Carson's spare key from a fake rock in the back garden. It's a similar setting to the first episode, a nice suburban neighborhood, but we've learned our lesson by now. Horror can find us in all types of settings. We make our way around the side of the house, and that eerie score is already set in. Nothing's even happened yet, but there's plenty of tension being built, just off of that music alone. Luckily, we've got a companion for this level, Zeke the dog. Our first objective is to christen the Carson house toilet. I don't know how long the player's character has been holding this piss in for, but it goes on for a good while. But whilst we're here, if you could like this video and subscribe, I'd massively appreciate it. Afterwards, we get a text from Mr. Carson, and I really like this tiny feature where, once he gets added to our contacts, the text tone changes to blue. It's small details like this that show how much passion is put into these games. Anyway, our next job is to feed Zeke. We need to go down into the basement, but it's pitch black down there. Mr. Carson texts us again and lets us know there's a torch we can use to find Zeke's food. Another funny feature is the Carson surname is written in marker on the side of the torch. This just lets us know how white the Carson family truly are. One of my biggest issues with this game is how unnecessarily long it is. Whilst episode 3 was one of my favourites, it was packed with chores that padded out the game's length but didn't really add much to the story. Once we've finished feeding Zeke, Mr. Carson asks if we'll take a look at his computer. Apparently, Carson Jr. has been visiting some sketchy sites and the computer has a virus. After installing some antivirus and watching this weird advert downstairs,
I'll take 'em. I got the best.
we get another fetch quest from Mr. C. We've got to take his son's bike and drive down to pick up his shopping. There's a pretty funny detail where if you fall off the bike, the player narrates that he doesn't actually know how to ride a bike yet at 18 years old. I was pretty excited for a change of scenery, and this segment's actually important to the plot, so I didn't mind this chore too much. Once inside, we bump into two of our school friends. One of them mentions that they just saw our girlfriend before they get corrected. They actually saw our ex-girlfriend, Kara. They tell us that she just came in and bought loads of booze, and this guy in the red hoodie, he needs to have a cold shower or something.
Huh?
Moving on, we start to get Mr. Carson's shopping together. Once we're done, we head home on the bike. I'm not exactly sure how, but this guy has to do another minute-long piss, and if you really want, you can fail the Carson House pissing minigame. Not only will you piss all over his floor, but the character narrates it as part of the actual story. It's probably a good time to mention that the Carson House has these cameras you can access in the computer room. When we switch to camera 10, there's a pizza delivery guy stood outside, but we never ordered any pizza. The pizza delivery guy asks if he can stay inside for a while because it's raining. I actually would have let him in, but the only options we have are just 3 different variations of no. I don't understand how you could turn away a smile like that. Finally, we get sat down, and I'm not going to make that same joke about the lasagna all the way back in episode 1 because I'm pretty sure everyone's got through a whole pizza on their own before. Still, that was crazy though that he ate a full-size family tray of We're about halfway through this really weird, poorly animated film. I think it could be How to Ratatouille Your Panda, but I might be wrong.
Okay, you asked for it.
Suddenly, the doorbell goes off. There's no sign of anyone out here, but whoever was just here left us some flowers. Not exactly knowing what to make of it, we go back upstairs and continue with our homework. Late into the night, the power goes out. We check our phone to a flurry of strange messages from an unknown number. It's worth noting how good the score is that kicks in once we read these texts. They're exactly the kind of text that maybe a Psycho X would send. It's the perfect music to play as we piece together what exactly is happening. To progress the story, we need to head outside and switch the power back on. We notice that it's been tampered with. We go back upstairs to continue with our schoolwork when we start to hear noises coming from downstairs. We need to investigate. Obviously, this wasn't the real ending. Once we hear this noise, we have to check the cameras to see the oven has been switched on. We can safely go and switch it off now and return back upstairs to check the cameras again. That's when we see it. It's Kara, our ex-girlfriend. She's broken in and has a knife. All we can do now is watch in terror as she slowly but surely makes her way to the computer room we're now hiding in. Kara calls out to us. She tells us she's missed us and wants to get back together. Suddenly, all of the pieces start fitting together. Kara starts accusing us of leaving her for someone else. The whole time, the music in the background just gets more and more tense. Until we finally tell her to leave, and she snaps. We warn her that we could call the police, and she pauses for a moment. We need to hide, and fast. As soon as this text pops up, we have to book it straight out the door. I left the house and ran down the block. My dad called the cops. Though, by the time they arrived, she'd already left the house. But I knew where she lived. Kara was one of the first people I met on a dating site. She was 3 years older than me, but I found her cute, so we started dating. However, 2 months into our relationship, she started doing meth. I tried to get her help, but she turned it around on me as if I was trying to change her. One day, I had enough, and I had to break up with her. I told her to leave and never contact me again. She was pissed. She was trying to convince one of the cops she didn't intend on doing anything wrong that night. But of course, the cop wasn't buying it. They reviewed the footage and it showed everything, from the point of her entry to the moment she grabbed the kitchen knife. But the thing that messed with me the most was the fact that nothing was stolen from the house. Turns out, she was heavily under the influence of drugs and alcohol at the time. She was arrested and sentenced for a long while. Carson House is one of the scariest entries to the series purely for how realistic it is. This sort of thing could happen to anyone, and there's so many different points that Kara can attack you from. As early as when you get the flowers, if you go back outside and round the side of the garage, she's ready and waiting for you. The music that plays as she chases you and her awkward methed up run are terrifying. There's a glitch where if you get on the bike, it renders you invisible to Kara. This means we can get closer to her without her attacking us. So far, Carson House takes the #1 spot for my favourite episode. It was terrifying. However, at the time of recording, there's one episode I haven't played yet. That's right, I've saved the potential best till last, Rail's longest and most hyped episode. Episode 4, IRONBARK Lookout. Hey, I noticed you were requesting story submissions whilst I was watching a YouTuber play fearstofathom, Carson House. What I'm about to recount happened when I was 24 or so at the time. It feels kind of weird telling anyone about this because of the bizarre and absurd nature of the whole thing, but I feel like doing so might help me process my memories of it. I knew that sharing this story anywhere else would be a dumb idea because people would say I was lying. As I'm writing this was the scariest experience of my life. I'm Jack Nelson, had a small job as a park ranger in a state park. I was a fire lookout stationed in one of the largest forests in the Pacific Northwest. Miles and miles of dense forest, managed by the Forestry Service. I had a salary that allowed me to make ends meet, but I couldn't afford to treat myself to restaurants, nice clothes, etc. My biggest accomplishment so far was being able to buy an RV for myself, with a lot of financial help from my dad. That RV was the only sense of home I had at the time. This one time I was transferred from one outpost to another because of some official circumstances. It was a minor inconvenience to me though. Since I lived out of my RV and liked travelling, I said a few goodbyes and I was off to the new location. So far, we've seen 2 episodes set in suburban areas and 1 in a more rural setting. Episode 4 changes things up the most out of any other entry to the series. It starts with us driving our RV to the new station. The sun's just setting and the pink sky makes me feel at ease for the moment. We've been driving for a while and eventually come through a small rest stop with a diner. It's time to pull in. The RV is pretty cozy inside. It's got everything you'd need, and with how detailed it is, I thought it would be a much bigger part to the story than it ends up being. We step out into the car park and go to meet the first character we can interact with. This guy stood by his car eating a burger. I'm not sure why Rail likes to include overly obnoxious eating sounds into his game, but each to their own.
Brother,
He asks if we've heard the news and proceeds to tell us about 3 children that went missing in the woods we'll be working in. He then mentions rumours about Bigfoot or goat men wandering around. After mentioning to us that a lot of hikers and campers go missing there, this eerie score settles in. And then, that's it. He's straight back into his burger. We step inside to get some food. Nothing too interesting happens in this segment, but we do get 3 different options for dinner. Either a cheeseburger and fries, grilled cheese and onion rings, or meatball sub with chicken nuggets. All 3 sound delicious, but I'm really feeling a meatball sub and some nuggies. I'm still in disbelief that it's taken me this late into the series to find out I can swerve my mouse and piss all over the floor. I was constantly made aware that this was the last episode for now, so I made sure to appreciate all the little details fearstofathom had for me. I can see our food being brought out, and when I was playing this episode, I hadn't eaten lunch yet in real life and was starving. Even though this meal's lacking in the polygon department, it came with 3 different dipping sauces. My character uses his telekinesis powers to levitate his food and eat it. Just when I thought this meal couldn't get any better, the bill comes and it's only $6. We get the option to leave a 15% tip, a 50% tip, or no tip. Unfortunately for this lady, I watched Reservoir Dogs before I played this episode, so she's getting nothing.
I don't tip.
you don't tip?
No, I don't believe in it.
On the way back to the car, we can see this guy still hasn't finished his burger. We get in and drive away. It's a little later now, and this road makes me remember that long drive in episode 2. As we're cruising down this dark road, the park ranger narrates that he won't give the exact name and location of where this story happened, out of fear of people seeking out the horrors he found. Eventually, we pull up at the entrance of the park. We park up and go look for whoever's in charge. It's the park manager, Billy. Innocent jump scares like these are quickly becoming a staple of this franchise. He creeps us out a little before checking we're in the system and letting us through the trail. Billy hands us a flashlight, and before we can set off, he warns us about going too far from our station, telling us there's nasty things out in the woods. I'm just about to start the journey through, but then I notice these missing posters. I start the short hike to our station, but I swear I can hear some sort of footsteps in these woods. It's getting late now, and we've arrived at the base of our tower. I was surprised they didn't make the hike here playable, although, at this point, more than enough tension has been built up already. Making my way up these stairs, you have to wonder how people actually manage to stay out in the woods like this on their own for months at a time. I guess the lookout doesn't look too bad. It's pretty cozy actually. It reminds me of another horror game I played by Puppet Combo starring a park ranger on lookout duty. I decided to check out the computer, and aside from this weird training video voiced by Jacksepticeye,
Welcome to IRONBARK State Park. If you're watching this video, then let me be the first to say,
Congratulations!
And this bootleg version of COD Zombies. There's nothing too exciting on here. This episode is by far the most innovative, purely for the fact it's the first one with proper voice acting in it.
Haven't gotten your name yet. What is it again? I saw your light turn on. I gotta say, it's refreshing to see Tower 11 alive again. I'm Connor, Fire Tower 12. An experienced comrade. I can see why Mitch picked you. You got a fire going? Get her lit. The temperature's about to plummet. You don't want to sit through the storm shivering.
We've got to get a fire started, but for whatever reason, the firewood stored downstairs in the storage shack. We've got another chore to do as well. Each night we have to clock in our weather reports and wind speeds. It's a bit mundane, but it's the only way to progress the story. Once we're done, I head down and grab that firewood.
I see it. I see the smoke. Nice to see Tower 11 alive again. Did you report for the night yet?
With all our chores finished, we can finally get some well-earned sleep. We wake up at 3:30 to the sound of the radio static. After checking it, we need to piss again. The character narrates that it feels strange being outside the cabin at this time. Now, it's a pretty niche favourite to have, but I think this is my favourite pissing sequence in the entire series. It's literally off of a tower that's hundreds of feet in the air. It must feel so liberating to do this. When night 2 comes around, I'm not even sure this is a horror game anymore. We've got a beautiful view, some nice music, and a hot cup of joe. It's so peaceful and cozy, and with our sister tower in sight, it's hard to think there could be any danger out there at all. We even snap a few pictures of the sunset. Of course, this moment can't last forever. Eventually, we get a call about some campers set up on a restricted part of the trail.
You have eyes on the smoke north of your position. It appears to be in the Lacey Trail sector, which is not a registered campsite. People like that don't bother to clean up after themselves. And fire risks are high this season. Mind checking it out? Be alert and carry your bear spray, and you should be fine. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to carry your bear spray in these woods, new guy. Over and out.
Unfortunately, it's in our sector too, so we need to head out and speak with them. By the time we get to the Lacey Trail, it's already pretty dark. There's a sign here that clearly states no camping. Once we arrive at the campsite, it's empty. There's a closed off section here, and interacting with it gives us the option to call out into the darkness. The only thing left to do now is put out their fire and head back. I really don't want to spend any longer than I need to here. On the way home, I can hear something rustling in the woods. Even with the bear spray to defend myself, I'm not sticking around to find out who's there. Once we're home, I report to Connor.
Loud and clear, new guy. I was just cooking myself some hot... Well, first, what's your status? Are you kidding me? Son of a bitch. They never learn, do they? I'm sick of these bastards. It's unbelievable. This is the third time this month alone. Anything else you notice in those woods? A scream. Must have been one of those red foxes. They sound pretty much like a screaming lady at night. I don't know what you're talking about, new guy, but I heard from the rangers that a lot of campers have been flocking to that area lately because of the disappearance of those 3 kids. About a month ago, they were hiking with their families. They went off the trail and just vanished. No trace of them since. Well, people have started spreading rumors that the area might be haunted by some entities. It's crazy, I know. You would think these rumors would scare people off, but apparently it's been the opposite. Sometimes, I only wish they were true. Well, at least now you know why Mitch had to staff Tower 11 urgently. New guy? I hope you don't believe those rumors. Do you? Great. Anyways, thanks for staying vigilant.
Once we're done with our report, I start meal prepping. I'm just shoving random things into a dish and into the oven it goes. The cabin's looking a little bit messy now, but you can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs. We update our weather report and then finally, dinner's ready. When I see it, a lump starts forming in my throat. It's even girthier than the last one. The cheesiness, the tasteful thickness of that outer layer. Oh my god, he even has a watermark. I do apologise. I know I've made 6 too many references to that episode 1 lasagna, but I still can't get out of my head why you eat a full-size tray like that. Like, that would have been a full meal for... There's definitely something shady going on. When I go to get more firewood, I can definitely hear something rustling around in the woods. Our last job for the night is to shut these boards, and once we're done, we can settle in and start sleeping off that lasagna. When we wake up, there's 100% someone outside. I can see their shadow through the window. The room looks completely different when it's pitch black, and what you're seeing here is my genuine panic and confusion trying to find the light switch. I grab the bear spray and put on a brave face. Whoever's there, we need to confront them now. As it turns out, we're actually supposed to wait a little while before opening the door. When we do, this creepy effigy has been left outside of it.
You have any idea what time it is? Just couldn't wait until morning. Tell you what, new guy, it's probably best to ignore these kids messing around. I suspect that's what Marley got tired of. These kids can be pretty creative with these pranks. They watch too many horror movies. Maybe they thought it would be funny.
We start the third night looking out over the wind. We've got to clean these binoculars, and just as we're doing that, a flare goes off in the distance. I misclicked and accidentally threw my binoculars off the tower, but luckily you don't need them after this point. The radio starts going off, and it turns out a hiker has got himself lost.
Hello? Can anyone hear me? Oh, thank goodness. I'm lost, and I'm really starting to freak out. I don't even know where to start. I went out to explore the area and lost track of time. And now it's dark, and I can't remember the trail back to my truck. I think I'm lost. I'm in the middle of the woods, on this trail surrounded by trees. Everything looks different at night. I thought shooting a few flare gun shots might get someone's attention, but no one's come yet. All it did was light up the trees and make everything look even scarier. I just want to find a way out of here. I remember passing a small stream earlier. I'm walking towards west right now because I remember walking east when I came here. Oh, thank goodness. I see it. I'm at a trail intersection now, but I can't remember if I should take the right trail or the left to get back to the trailhead. Can you help me? I knew it. I thought it looked familiar. I couldn't have trusted myself with this decision. Thanks for helping me through this. I'm right here! I hear you. I hear your whistles. What? I see you behind the trees to my right. You're freaking me out.
When we answer the door, it's Billy with a few supplies for us. I'm a little shaken from that encounter on the radio, but there's still quite a few things to do. We need to finalise our report, eat the other half of that succulent lasagna, and fetch some firewood from outside. I'm not sure how many jump scares my heart has left in it at this point. We meet this creepy looking guy. He tells us he's a maintenance worker on one of the nearby radio towers. Then he talks to us about fire safety and how some fires can't be stopped. Then about nature and how it has its own plans for us to purify the land. That same creepy score settles in, confirming my suspicions that this guy is in fact a weirdo. He leaves us on this creepy note and then wanders off into the woods.
your tower. Don't tell me you're not in there. You copy now? Finally. I've been trying to reach you for a while now. Where have you... It doesn't exactly take ages to get just some firewood. Ran into who? Is this about yesterday? You trying to yank my chain now? That radio tower's been out of service for ages now. It was closed down years ago after a lightning strike fried its systems, and its repair cost was deemed too costly. Its repair date was postponed until the next big funding, which is no time soon, according to Mitch. Look, if what you're saying is true, it could be another one of those goons playing pranks on you. Knew your name. You think he's been listening? Either way, disguising as a staff member is strictly forbidden according to park guidelines. Next time you see him, get his information, or take a photo. We need to figure this out. Anyways, I'm seeing that you've already reported. I think I'm gonna hit the sack now. Tower 12, signing off. We got another one. I know it's late, but you're gonna want to see this one, Jack. Jack, do you copy? Okay, tell you what. I don't have the energy to do this right now. I've been here busting my ass, working on that old piece of garbage generator, and now I'm seeing this. Seeing more smoke to my west. Looks like we got another camper. It appears to be in your sector. You see the campsite from your end? You know what? I don't have it in me to deal with this crap tonight. I'm gonna let you deal with this one. If they don't run away this time, take their photos and IDs. And if things get worse, don't hesitate to call HQ for help. Update me tomorrow morning. I'm gonna get some rest.
With Jack gone, we need to take a look at this campsite and see what we can find. Only, this doesn't look like any normal campfire. Multiple people stood wearing robes in the middle of the woods, with what looks like a dead body burning in the middle of it all. We have to get proof this time. We take out our phone and start zooming in. When we look back, they've all disappeared. My fight or flight was kicking in, and given that these guys are immune to bear spray, it was time to hide. This moment was so unnerving. Every moment so far had led up to this. Who knew what these guys' intentions were? Whatever they had in mind for me, it can't have been good. I wait until this guy steps outside, and then it's time to run. That first attempt was a little bit sloppy. I panicked a bit too much, and I figured we had to just beeline it straight out of the woods. What we're actually supposed to do is take cover in this portaloo and wait for the killer to check out the storage shack. Once he's down there, only then can we sprint out and make our way back to the park's entrance. We made it all the way back. Finally, we're safe. We'd better head back to that RV that I forgot we owned. As adrenaline kicked in, I hit the gas and drove to the nearest ranger cabin. Out of breath, I radioed in to alert the HQ. Look, Jack, we all get a little stir crazy out here. Next morning, authorities allegedly ran a small investigation of the area. But of course, they met with no signs of misconduct. No one ever believed my story, dismissing it as a product of isolation. Just stick to looking out for fires, Mitch offered. However, that was the last time I ever set my foot in those woods again. I'm gutted it's all over. Episode 4 reigns supreme over all the other ones. Once episode 5 releases, I'll be sure to revisit this series. The Fearstofathom games are absolutely spine-chilling. These games spend 90% of the playtime building up this raw primal tension, and then hit you with the scariest 20 to 30 seconds of terror right at the end. It's made even more terrifying when you take into account that these are all real stories. Whilst this last one is the least believable out of the 4, it's still not too far from the realm of possibilities. I had a great time going through all these games. Each of them are made with so much passion. I've included a link below to the Fearstofathom Steam page if any of you want to play these episodes for yourself. If you made it this far, then thank you so much for watching all the way through. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a like and subscribe. I've added this little bonus segment at the end as well, as a reward for anyone who made it this far. Okay, so this is a little bonus segment just before the video ends that I've been cooking up for you guys. So we're going to be taking a quick look at this tier list that I've laid out. It's pretty simple. So we're ranking each killer based on 2 categories, those being if I could or could not beat them in a fight. Alright, so jumping straight in with Grandpa. Alright, I could 100% kill this guy easily. He's an old man, so yeah. Alright, and then in the number 2 spot we've got the Motel Killer. So this guy doesn't stand much of a chance either, and I'd even drink coffee as well, so this guy wouldn't be able to roofie me in the first place. So coming at the number 3 spot we've got Kara. Now this one's literally a teenage girl. Even with a knife, you know, I'd be able to smack her down in one swift motion. So we're going to just move her up here as well with these 3. And then last but not least, we've got the cultist from the final episode. So even though these guys are immune to bear spray and they've got an area advantage, you need to remember that I've got the long range piss. So yeah, that's another easy win. In you go, buddy. There's only one here that I wouldn't be able to manage, and that's this fella right here. Thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, more content to come, and have a good one.